Anybody want to say anything? Ask anything, or please go ahead and do that. Object as well, Please, yes.
As you were talking about the belief that they're this mechanical view, at the same time, in a subliminal sense, or perhaps even in a conscious sense, they basically believe they're going to live forever, don't they? And they're never going to be old like us, and we don't know anything. There's this sort of feeling of total omnipotence.
Invulnerability,
which
omnipotence.
Is sort of a myth, yes. In a sense,
yes.
And yet on another level.
And it hits them very, very hard when there is a death. At Winstones there was the death of one of the young people in class 10 who fell on a cliff exercise, or not exercise, it was out of school hours of holiday. And the whole process of that was just utterly transformational for the class, how they handled that, what they wanted to do with it, how they wanted to celebrate his life, and it was amazing. All their capacities came to the fore in that tragedy. But meanwhile, yes, they live like they live forever, and yeah, it's huge. It does change very quickly. I don't know whether I told you already that Mark Twain said that when he left home at the age of 18 or 17 or something, he thought his dad was an old fool who didn't know anything. And when he came back at the age of 21, he was amazed how much the old man had learnt in such a short time. So these transformations, I think, happen very quickly. And I think it's very important in teenage years to say, oh my God, what's going to happen? It's like this, And then you have a vision, somehow 10 or 15 years like this. 10 months later, it could be a completely different story. But it is difficult to have faith and have trust when they're going through certain processes, you think. But a couple of years later, there is just such a transformation. It can be unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah.
Could I ask, slightly confused when you were talking about testing, as these Steiner children wouldn't be tested on science, would they?
Can be. That I don't think testing has any. I don't have any problem with testing if the mood around the testing is not this is what you need to know to have achieved compliance with main lesson or something, But they do. I mean, in younger classes too. They like to. Actually be challenged. The testing usually I do orally around the class, but to end a main lesson with a chemistry test or a biology test or something, if it's the right mood, they sort of actually welcome it and say, great, we're going to have a test, and you have that sort of mood around it, then I think it can be fine. The difficulty with the examination side and the testing side, if it becomes a sort of inevitable, somehow, statement of what has been achieved and these goals, the whole goal orientation of education is so powerful that then it's very sad, because many things can go on for a teenager in a lesson that outwardly there doesn't seem to be any product, but actually inwardly a lot has happened that they take with them.
So the sort of science in a Steiner curriculum couldn't really be examinable in the state system as it is at the moment, because there are different processes going on.
It wouldn't be possible to base your state examination curriculum on what's done in the main lesson. Lots of things can be drawn as content from the main lesson and then packaged up like you do, how to answer exam questions. It's exam technique. So that can be done. And then there's quite a lot of content that one wouldn't want to be bringing into a main lesson really so early. One wouldn't want to, so there are compromises to be made there. One of the difficulties in threading the exam work into a Steiner school, in the upper school, is that to take a subject in main lesson is to embark with a completely different motive than the examination side has. And although the content is not always incompatible, it's very hard once you have a motive for something to change that around. So once you have a motive to achieve an outer recognition of something in the form of examination, particularly where it's accepted and acknowledged by, you know, the whole wider community of world of work or the world of further education, once that becomes the kind of aim and the motive, and it's a very good one, it's got its own value, it's very easy for the other engagement with the work for its own sake to actually produce a really fine drawing and to have been glad to have presented a good piece of clear work that really describes whatever the experiment or whatever the phenomena is. One has a sort of corrupting influence on the other. We know that there is the corruptible nature of the reward, and it's good to have rewards, and we should reward ourselves as well as rewarding others, but that it's a two-edged sword, and I'm sure you know what I mean. And so in working with the necessities of an examination structure, perhaps imposed, you know, on the school by conditions, one, yeah, accepts that. But I think to know the tension and to be aware of the tension goes a long way towards overcoming it. If you pretend it's not there, or try to ignore it, or say, well, we can work with this, and you know, it's okay, we can, you know, it's sort of not okay. And if one knows it's not okay and is very careful about what's happening, then it can become okay to work with those two aspects at once. And I hope I'm not treading too heavily on difficult ground. What I'm trying to say is that while on all the Steiner schools have this struggle. It's not, you know, Hereford's not alone in this by any means, but that tension between the two is something that's irreconcilable, and it's always needing to be worked with. One hopes very much that the project that I know Trevor could say more about than I, which is being worked at, I think Hereford's taking part in this, a European project to try and bring about a standard, no, standard's the wrong word, I'm going to mangle this, sorry Trevor, I'll just briefly say, leave the rest to you, a form of accreditation for main lesson which could stand pupils in good stead for further education in Europe, to be acknowledged and validated in Europe, across Europe, and to escape from this dreadedly confined GCSE system we have in place. You might want to add something in case I've distorted it, Trevor. Don't, you know, please don't.
I was going to say something, but on this subject we could maybe have another talk and make a presentation of what we're up to. But the thing I wanted to say was just something on this, well, to me anyway, it's a mystery and it's a paradox and it's a question that comes back to me as I get older and older. This thing about the difference between the animals and the human being. And the reason I mention it is for the following. I've got a son in Australia at the moment, and he's on an island just off the Barrier Reef, and he's experienced swimming with dolphins for the first time in his life. And when I spoke to him on the phone about it recently, he said that the most fascinating and amazing thing is that when you're swimming with dolphins, they constantly emit a sound towards you, because a little bit like bats, they have to judge where you are, and by sending a sound towards you and getting the vibration back, they can locate you so they don't collide with you or bash into you. So it's a very protective and caring sort of gesture. So I put that on one side, and then to come to class 10, I should say we've looked a little bit at the life of Darwin. And I posed them this task of writing in favour with the fact that the human being is really just an animal, but a pretty advanced one, and the notion that the human being is not an animal, is something quite distinctive. So I set this written task and then gathered the books in, and I think there were about 20 people present. And I read through each of them, and I thought, I'm going to count these up and see what's going on here. 18 of them said we are animals, and 2 of them said we're not animals. And I thought, that's a little bit, that's slightly depressing, given my hidden agenda, and given they've had these years here. But then I went back and I reread what they'd written, and that was very interesting, because what they were saying was, we reject the notion that human beings are superior to, are in some way better than, more than, more important than, more precious than. And the sort of things they were saying were very much on this this level of empathy and sympathy and relationship. And I began to feel slightly better then, especially with this picture from my son saying that I've been swimming with these dolphins, and it's amazing how much care they take of you. And so I think this whole area of what we know about animals is one that there's probably a whole lot more to know and to find out. Because I think this notion of self-consciousness is absolutely fundamental and key. But having said that, I think there's an awful lot in the animal kingdom that we don't yet appreciate because our consciousness has not developed to the extent where we can appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.